The morning sun cast long shadows across the Youth Shed Charity Center in Birmingham as Prince William stepped out of his official car. The familiar sound of young voices echoed from the building, mixed with the clatter of tools and machinery. This wasn't his first visit to the charity that helped disadvantaged youth learn practical skills, but today felt different. Today, the prince had arrived with a mischievous glint in his eye and a challenge on his mind. Sarah Matthews, the charity's director, greeted him at the entrance. She had worked with the royal family on several occasions and noticed something unusual about William's demeanor. Instead of his typical formal handshake and polite inquiry about the charity's progress, he rolled up his sleeves the moment he walked through the door. Right then, "Sarah," William said with a grin that reminded everyone why the public had fallen in love with him as a young prince. "I hear you've got some talented young builders in there. Think any of them could show me a thing or two?" The question caught Sarah off guard. She had prepared the usual tour, complete with carefully arranged demonstrations and polite conversations with selected young participants. But William's energy suggested he had other plans entirely. Inside the main workshop, 16-year-old Marcus Johnson was bent over a woodworking bench, carefully measuring a piece of oak for a bookshelf he'd been crafting for weeks. Marcus had joined Youth Shedz 6 months earlier after getting into trouble at school. The program had become his lifeline, giving him purpose and teaching him skills that made him feel valuable for the first time in years. When Marcus looked up and saw Prince William approaching, his hands began to shake slightly. He'd never met anyone famous before, let alone a member of the royal family. But William's approach put him immediately at ease. "That's beautiful work," William said, running his fingers along the smooth edge of Marcus's bookshelf. "How long have you been woodworking?" "Just started here, Your Royal Highness," Marcus replied, still not quite believing he was having this conversation. "Never touched a tool before this place." William picked up one of Marcus's hand planes, testing its weight and examining the sharp blade. "Mind if I have a go? Fair warning, though. I spent quite a bit of time in my father's workshop as a lad. Might give you some competition." The comment sparked something in Marcus. Growing up in a rough neighborhood had taught him never to back down from a challenge, royal or not. "You think you can make a better bookshelf than me?" Sarah watched nervously as the conversation took an unexpected turn. Protocol suggested she should intervene, redirect the conversation towards safer topics. But William's laugh was infectious, and she found herself curious to see where this would lead. "Tell you what," William said, his competitive spirit now fully awakened. "How about we each build something side by side? Same materials, same tools, same time limit. Let the other young people here judge whose craftsmanship is better." Marcus's eyes widened. The Prince of England wanted to compete with him in a woodworking contest. 6 months ago, he'd been heading toward juvenile detention. Now he was being challenged to a building competition by someone who would one day be king. "You're on," Marcus said, extending his hand for a shake that sealed an unusual royal wager. Word spread quickly through the Youth Shed Center. Young people abandoned their various projects to gather around the main workshop area. 18-year-old Priya Singh, who had been working on electrical installations in the next room, came over with her tools still in hand. Tommy Chun, a 15-year-old who specialized in metalwork, brought several of his friends to witness what was surely going to be the most unusual royal visit in the charity's history. Sarah quickly realized she needed to adapt to this new situation. She assigned Emma Rodriguez, one of their most experienced instructors, to oversee the competition and ensure safety protocols were followed. Emma, a former carpenter who had volunteered at Youth Sheds for 3 years, had seen her share of surprising moments, but nothing quite like this. Right then, Emma announced, "Try to maintain some semblance of order. If we're doing this, we're doing it properly." Both contestants get identical materials: pine boards, screws, sandpaper, and hand tools only. No power tools to keep it fair. You have 2 hours to build anything you want, and these young people will judge the results. William removed his jacket and tie, handing them to a somewhat bewildered security officer. Underneath, he wore a simple white shirt that he immediately rolled up to his elbows. Marcus, meanwhile, put on his safety goggles, and selected his favorite chisel from the tool rack. The gathering crowd of young people began placing informal bets on the outcome. Most assumed the prince would struggle with actual manual labor, despite his confident claims about experience. They'd seen plenty of adults visit the center and talk about their practical skills, only to prove utterly hopeless when handed real tools. But as William selected his first board and began marking measurements with a pencil, his movements showed surprising confidence. His hands seemed to know exactly how to hold the measuring tape, how to mark straight lines, how to position the wood for the first cut. "Blimey," whispered Jake Morrison, a 17-year-old who had been at youth Shedz for over a year. "He actually looks like he knows what he's doing." Marcus had chosen to build a small storage box with a hinged lid, an ambitious project that would showcase multiple woodworking skills. William, after studying his materials for several minutes, announced his intention to create a small stool with decorative joinery work. "A stool?" Marcus asked, pausing in his initial measurements. "That's it. Never underestimate a well-made stool," William replied with a knowing smile. "The devil's in the details, as they say." Emma started the timer, and both contestants began their work in earnest. The gathered young people settled in to watch, many pulling up chairs and makeshift seating to get the best view of this unprecedented royal competition. William's first cuts were clean and confident. He worked with the focused intensity of someone who had indeed spent considerable time in workshops, his movements economical and purposeful. But Marcus wasn't intimidated. He had developed his own rhythm over the past 6 months, and his passion for the craft showed in every careful measurement and precise cut. As the competition progressed, something remarkable began to happen. The initial novelty of watching a prince work with his hands gave way to genuine appreciation for the skill both contestants displayed. William's technique showed formal training and natural aptitude, while Marcus's work revealed the kind of intuitive understanding that comes from passion and dedication. The other young people at Youth Shedz found themselves drawn into the competition in ways they hadn't expected. Priya began offering advice to both contestants about grain direction. Tommy suggested techniques for achieving smoother finishes. What had started as a novelty was becoming a genuine learning experience for everyone involved. Halfway through the allotted time, both projects were taking impressive shape. Marcus's storage box showed sophisticated joinery work, with perfectly fitted corners and a lid that already hung beautifully on its brass hinges. William's stool revealed unexpected artistic flair, with decorative elements that elevated it far beyond basic furniture. The competitive atmosphere began to shift as both contestants realized they were evenly matched. This wasn't going to be a case of a privileged royal struggling with manual labor, nor would it be a story of an inexperienced youth being outclassed by superior training. This was shaping up to be a genuine contest between two skilled craftsmen who happened to represent very different worlds. Sarah watched from the sidelines, marveling at how the morning had evolved. She had organized hundreds of royal visits, charity events, and public relations opportunities. But she had never witnessed anything quite like the focused intensity that had settled over her workshop. The young people of Youth Shedz were seeing their work and their skills valued in a way that went beyond charity and sympathy. Prince William wasn't patronizing them or offering empty encouragement. He was competing with them, respecting their abilities enough to risk losing to them. As the timer ticked toward the halfway point, both Marcus and William paused to assess their progress and plan their remaining time. The competition was far from over, but already it had become something neither had expected when the challenge was first issued. The stool taking shape under William's hands showed influences from traditional British furniture making, with subtle curves and proportions that spoke of classical training. Marcus's storage box, meanwhile, revealed a more contemporary sensibility, with clean lines and practical functionality that reflected his generation's aesthetic preferences. Emma watched both projects develop with professional interest. As an experienced carpenter, she could see that both contestants possessed genuine skill. This wasn't going to be a polite victory for either side. This was going to be decided by craftsmanship, creativity, and attention to detail. The crowd of young spectators had grown as word spread throughout the center. Even participants from other programs, cooking classes, computer training, and job interview preparation had wandered over to witness the unprecedented scene of a future king of England locked in serious competition with one of their own. With 1 hour remaining, the real work began in earnest. Both contestants entered the zone that serious craftsmen know well, that focused state where hands, tools, and materials work in perfect harmony toward a shared vision. The youth Shedz workshop had never felt quite so alive with possibility and purpose. Two very different young men, separated by circumstances of birth and privilege, were discovering common ground in the satisfaction of creating something beautiful and useful with their own hands. As the first hour concluded and the second began, everyone present understood they were witnessing something special, a moment when artificial barriers dissolved and human skill and creativity took center stage. The real competition was just beginning. The morning sun climbed higher, streaming through the workshop windows and illuminating two projects that would soon test not just woodworking ability, but the capacity of young people to recognize excellence regardless of its source. In 60 minutes, Marcus and William would complete their work, and the youth of Birmingham would render their verdict on this most unusual royal challenge. The second hour of the competition began with both contestants fully absorbed in their work. William had moved on to the more delicate aspects of his stool, carefully shaping decorative elements that would distinguish his piece from ordinary furniture. His tongue poked out slightly from the corner of his mouth in concentration, a habit his mother had once teased him about during childhood art projects. Marcus, meanwhile, was tackling the most challenging part of his storage box, creating a perfectly fitted lid that would close smoothly without gaps. This required precise measurements and careful adjustment, skills he had developed through months of patient practice under Emma's guidance. The watching crowd had naturally divided into informal supporters, though the lines weren't drawn as expected. Some young people cheered for Marcus as one of their own, but others found themselves impressed by William's obvious skill and dedication to the craft. The prince wasn't coasting on his title. He was earning respect through competence. 17-year-old Yasmin Ali, who had been skeptical about the royal visit from the beginning, found herself leaning forward to get a better look at William's joinery work. "Look at those corners," she whispered to her friend Kai. "That's proper craftsmanship, that is." Kai nodded, but his attention was equally divided between both contestants. Marcus is holding his own, though. "That box is going to be beautiful." Emma moved between the two workstations, offering occasional safety reminders, but mostly staying out of the way. As a professional, she could see that both men had entered the flow state that separated true craftsmen from casual hobbyists. Their movements had become fluid and purposeful, each action building naturally toward the next. William reached for a piece of fine-grit sandpaper and began smoothing the curved legs of his stool. The methodical rhythm of his sanding created a gentle whisper that mixed with the sound of Marcus's careful chisel work on the other side of the workspace. "Time check," Emma called out. 90 minutes elapsed, 30 minutes remaining. The announcement brought a slight tension to both contestants' movements. William paused to assess his progress, running his hands over the emerging stool to check for rough spots or imperfections. Marcus held his storage box lid up to the light, examining the fit of his hinges and making tiny adjustments to ensure perfect alignment. Sarah watched from her position near the workshop entrance, still marveling at how completely the morning had diverged from her careful plans. She had prepared talking points about the charity's impact, statistics about youth employment, and carefully rehearsed introductions to their most articulate young participants. Instead, she was witnessing something far more powerful, a genuine exchange of respect and skill that no amount of planning could have created. The gathered young people had become increasingly invested in the competition as it progressed. What had started as curiosity about seeing a royal family member in their space had evolved into genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship they were witnessing. Never seen anyone work with like that before, murmured Bradley Cooper, a 16-year-old who specialized in automotive repair. Makes me want to try carpentry myself. His comment captured something important happening in the room. The competition wasn't just entertainment. It was inspiration. Seeing both Marcus and William pour such focused energy into creating something beautiful with their hands was making manual skills seem more valuable and prestigious than many of these young people had ever considered. William reached the most delicate phase of his project, carving small decorative flourishes into the stool's legs. These weren't necessary for function, but they would elevate his piece from simple furniture to genuine craftsmanship. He selected a small carving gouge and began working with the careful patience of someone who understood that rushing would ruin hours of previous work. Marcus, having achieved the perfect lid fit he wanted, moved on to the final sanding of his storage box. His project was nearly complete, but he knew that the quality of his finished work would make the difference between good craftsmanship and exceptional craftsmanship. The competitive atmosphere in the room had evolved into something more collaborative than anyone had expected. Young people began offering quiet suggestions and encouragement to both contestants. Priya pointed out a small rough spot on William's stool leg. Tommy suggested a different sanding technique to Marcus for achieving an even smoother finish. "This is mad," whispered Jake Morrison to his friend Ashley. "We're giving woodworking advice to the future king of England." Ashley grinned. "And he's listening to us." Indeed, William had thanked Priya for her observation and was carefully addressing the imperfection she had spotted. This wasn't the behavior of someone condescending to humor young people. This was the response of a craftsman grateful for useful feedback. Emma called out another time warning. 20 minutes remaining. Both contestants entered their final sprint. William began applying a hand-rubbed oil finish to his stool, working in thin, even coats that would enhance the wood's natural grain. Marcus started his own finishing process, choosing a clear polyurethane that would protect his storage box while showcasing the beauty of the pine's natural patterns. The workshop had filled with the pleasant scents of wood oil and finishing materials, creating an atmosphere that spoke of serious craftsmanship. The gathered young people watched in fascination as both projects transformed under their final treatments. Sarah noticed that several participants who hadn't been working on woodworking projects had quietly begun examining the tools and materials around the workshop. The competition was inspiring interest in skills that many of them had never considered trying. 10 minutes, Emma announced. William and Marcus both shifted into final detail mode. William used a soft cloth to ensure his oil finish was evenly distributed, bringing out the subtle grain patterns in the pine. Marcus carefully wiped excess polyurethane from corners and edges, ensuring no drip marks would mar his storage box's clean lines. The watching crowd had grown silent, recognizing that they were witnessing the final moments of something special. Both projects had exceeded everyone's expectations, including those of the contestants themselves. With 5 minutes remaining, both men stepped back to assess their completed work. William's stool stood on elegant legs that curved gracefully toward a seat that would be both comfortable and visually appealing. The decorative elements he had carved added personality without overwhelming the piece's clean lines. Marcus's storage box revealed sophisticated joinery work that would have impressed professional carpenters. The lid fit perfectly, the corners were clean and tight, and the finish showcased the wood's natural beauty while providing practical protection. "Time!" Emma called out. Both contestants set down their tools and stepped away from their workbenches. The workshop erupted in applause from the gathered young people, recognizing that they had witnessed exceptional craftsmanship from both competitors. William wiped his hands on a shop towel and extended one toward Marcus. "That," he said with genuine admiration, "is absolutely beautiful work. I am genuinely impressed." Marcus shook the offered hand, his earlier nervousness replaced by the confidence that comes from knowing you've done your best work. "Your stool is incredible. Those decorative details must have taken years to learn." The mutual respect between the competitors set the tone for what would come next. Emma had recruited 5 of the workshop's most experienced young participants to serve as judges: Priya, Tommy, Jake, Yasmin, and Bradley. Each had developed their own expertise in different crafts, giving them the knowledge to assess quality workmanship. Right then, Emma announced, "Our judges will examine both pieces carefully, testing joints, checking finishes, and evaluating overall design. This is going to be judged on craftsmanship, not personalities." The judges approached their task with surprising seriousness. They ran their hands over both pieces, checking for rough spots, testing the strength of joints, and examining the quality of finishing work. Their evaluation was thorough and professional, treating both the prince's stool and Marcus's storage box with equal scrutiny. William watched the judging process with genuine interest rather than anxiety. Win or lose, the competition had clearly energized him in a way that formal royal engagements rarely did. The opportunity to create something beautiful with his hands, surrounded by young people who shared that passion, had tapped into something fundamental about what made work satisfying. Marcus stood beside his storage box, proud of what he had accomplished, but no longer nervous about the outcome. The competition had shown him that his skills could stand up to serious scrutiny, even from someone with formal training and obvious talent. The judges huddled together for their deliberation, speaking in low voices as they compared notes and debated the relative merits of both projects. Their discussion was animated but respectful, reflecting the serious way they were approaching their responsibility. Sarah watched the judging process unfold, recognizing that something important was happening beyond the simple question of who had built the better piece. The young people were taking ownership of their expertise, confidently evaluating craftsmanship, and making decisions based on their knowledge and experience. The deliberations stretched on for several minutes as the judges continued their careful discussion. Both projects clearly represented excellent work, making their decision genuinely difficult. They examined joints again, tested finishes one more time, and debated the relative importance of different aspects of craftsmanship. Finally, the judges broke their huddle and approached the 2 contestants. Emma called for quiet in the workshop as Priya, speaking for the judging panel, prepared to announce their decision. The moment of verdict had arrived, but already everyone present understood that the real victory was something larger than individual competition. The morning had demonstrated that skill, creativity, and dedication could flourish anywhere, bringing together young people and royalty in shared appreciation for the satisfaction of making beautiful things with their own hands. As Priya stepped forward to announce the judge's decision, the workshop fell silent with anticipation. The competition was about to conclude, but its impact was only beginning to unfold. Priya stepped forward, her usual confidence evident as she prepared to deliver the judge's verdict. The 18-year-old had grown up in Birmingham's challenging Handsworth district, where speaking with authority required genuine courage. Today, she was about to render judgment on work completed by a future king, and she approached the task with the same directness that had helped her succeed at Youth Shedz. "This was a really difficult decision," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the silent workshop. "Both pieces show proper craftsmanship and attention to detail. We examined joints, finishes, design, and overall execution." William and Marcus stood side by side, their earlier competition transformed into shared anticipation. The prince had loosened his collar and rolled his sleeves even higher, with shavings still clinging to his forearms. Marcus kept his safety goggles pushed up on his forehead, a habit he'd developed during his months at the center. "Marcus's storage box demonstrates excellent joinery work," Priya continued. "The corners are tight, the lid fits perfectly, and the finish is smooth and even. This is professional quality work that shows real understanding of the materials." Marcus felt a flush of pride at the recognition. 6 months ago, he couldn't have imagined receiving such detailed praise for anything he'd created with his own hands. "Prince William's stool shows advanced technique and artistic flair," Priya went on. "The decorative carving required real skill, and the proportions are excellent. The oil finish brings out the wood's natural beauty. The gathered young people listened intently, recognizing that Priya was treating this evaluation with the same seriousness she brought to her electrical work. Her technical language and detailed observations reflected the high standards youth Shedz had taught all of them to apply to their crafts. After examining both pieces carefully, Priya announced, "We've decided that the winner is—" She paused, not for dramatic effect, but because the decision genuinely deserved careful presentation. Marcus Johnson, for his storage box. The workshop erupted in cheers, with Marcus's friends rushing to congratulate him, while William immediately stepped forward to shake his hand again. "Absolutely deserved," William said warmly. "That box is genuinely impressive work. I'm honored to have competed against such skill." Marcus accepted the congratulations with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. He had just won a craftsmanship competition against Prince William, judged fairly by his peers based purely on the quality of their work. Tommy Chin stepped forward to explain the judge's reasoning. Both pieces were brilliant, but Marcus's box showed more complex joinery and problem-solving. The way he engineered that lid mechanism was proper clever. William nodded appreciatively. "Absolutely right. I chose a simpler project that played to my strengths." Marcus took on something more ambitious and executed it beautifully. Emma watched the interaction with professional satisfaction. The competition had achieved something remarkable. It had elevated the status of manual skills while demonstrating that excellence could be recognized and celebrated regardless of social position. Sarah approached the group, finally seeing an opportunity to redirect the morning toward more traditional royal visit activities. "Your Royal Highness, perhaps we could move on to tour our other programs?" But William wasn't ready to leave the workshop atmosphere behind. "Actually, I'd love to see what other projects these young people are working on. This has been absolutely fascinating." His genuine enthusiasm was evident to everyone present. This wasn't polite royal interest. This was the excitement of someone who had genuinely enjoyed himself and wanted to see more. Jake Morrison stepped forward with uncharacteristic boldness. "Your Highness, would you like to see my motorcycle restoration project? I'm rebuilding a 1970s Triumph in the automotive workshop." "I'd love to," William replied immediately. "Lead the way." The group moved toward the automotive section of the youth Shedz facility, with Marcus carrying his winning storage box and William's stool following close behind. The competitive atmosphere had evolved into something more collaborative, with young people eager to share their various projects and skills. The automotive workshop presented a dramatically different environment from the quiet woodworking area. Here, the sounds were louder and more industrial, pneumatic tools, metal on metal, and the rumble of engines being tested. Jake's Triumph motorcycle sat partially disassembled on a workbench, its engine components carefully organized and labeled. "Found her in a scrapyard," Jake explained, his earlier shyness completely gone. Engine was seized, frame was rusted, but the basic bones were solid. William examined the motorcycle with obvious interest, asking technical questions about compression ratios, carburetor adjustments, and frame modifications. His knowledge wasn't superficial. He clearly understood the mechanical principles involved in motorcycle restoration. "Have you considered upgrading the electrical system to modern standards?" William asked, pointing to the bike's aging wiring harness. "That's exactly what I'm working on next," Jake replied excitedly. "Priya's been helping me plan the rewiring." The conversation drew Priya over from where she'd been explaining her own electrical projects to other visitors. Soon, a three-way technical discussion was underway, covering topics that would have been incomprehensible to most casual observers. Bradley Cooper, the automotive repair specialist, joined the conversation with his own insights about vintage motorcycle restoration. Within minutes, William found himself at the center of a passionate discussion about torque specifications, part sourcing, and the philosophical differences between authentic restoration and practical modernization. Sarah watched this development with mixed feelings. The morning was certainly successful in ways she hadn't anticipated, but it was also completely beyond her control. William's obvious engagement with the young people and their work was wonderful to see, but it made her prepared schedule irrelevant. Emma approached Sarah with a knowing smile. "Sometimes the best royal visits are the ones that write themselves," she observed quietly. Meanwhile, William had moved on to examine Bradley's collection of engine diagnostic tools. The prince's questions revealed surprising depth of knowledge about automotive systems, sparking animated explanations from Bradley about compression testing and electronic fuel injection troubleshooting. "Where did you learn all this?" Bradley asked, genuinely curious about how someone in William's position had acquired such practical knowledge. "Bit of everything, really," William replied. "Military training, covered vehicle maintenance, and I've always been fascinated by how things work. My father taught me that understanding the practical side of things makes you better at everything else." The comment revealed something important about William's approach to his role. This wasn't casual dabbling in manual labor for public relations purposes. This was genuine appreciation for skilled work and the people who performed it. Yasmin Ali, who had been working on a welding project in the corner of the automotive shop, finally worked up the courage to approach the growing group around Jake's motorcycle. "Your Highness," she began tentatively, "would you like to see some welding? I'm working on a garden sculpture made from recycled metal." "Absolutely," William replied, his enthusiasm undimmed by the morning's activities. "I've always wanted to try proper welding." This comment caused a moment of concern for Emma and Sarah. Welding required serious safety protocols and wasn't something that could be attempted casually. But Yasmin had a solution. "You could practice on some scrap metal first," she suggested. "I've got safety gear that should fit, and I can show you the basics." Within minutes, William was suited up in welding helmet, heavy gloves, and protective clothing. Yasmin had set up a simple practice exercise, joining two pieces of scrap steel with a basic bead weld. "The key is steady movement and consistent speed," Yasmin explained, demonstrating the technique on a practice piece. "Too fast, and the weld won't penetrate properly. Too slow, and you'll burn through the metal." William's first attempt produced a wobbly, inconsistent bead that made everyone laugh, including himself. "Bit harder than it looks," he admitted cheerfully. "Takes practice," Yasmin encouraged. "Try again, but slow down your movement." His second attempt was noticeably better, producing a more consistent weld line. The gathered young people cheered the improvement, and William found himself genuinely proud of the modest progress. "This is brilliant," he said, lifting his welding helmet to examine his work. "I can see why you love it." Yasmin beamed with pride at the compliment. Teaching welding to a member of the royal family wasn't something she'd ever imagined doing, but William's genuine interest and willingness to learn made it feel natural. The morning continued with William moving from project to project, always asking questions and often requesting hands-on demonstrations. He tried his hand at electrical work under Priya's guidance, learned about computer programming from a young man working on app development, and even attempted some basic cooking techniques in the culinary training kitchen. Each interaction revealed the same pattern: William's genuine curiosity and respect for skilled work, combined with the young people's growing confidence in sharing their expertise. The artificial barriers between royalty and commoners seemed to dissolve in the face of shared interest in learning and creating. By late morning, word had spread throughout Birmingham about the unusual royal visit taking place at Shedz. Local media had arrived, but rather than disrupting the activities, they found themselves documenting something remarkable: a future king genuinely engaged in learning from young people whose society often overlooked. The woodworking competition had been just the beginning of something larger. William's competitive challenge to Marcus had opened the door to a morning of mutual learning and respect that would be remembered by everyone present for years to come. As the official visit time drew to a close, it became clear that William was reluctant to leave. He had found something at Youth Shedz that formal royal engagements rarely provided: authentic connection with people doing meaningful work with their hands and minds. The storage box that Marcus had built sat prominently displayed, a symbol of skill recognized and celebrated. But it had also become something more: a reminder that excellence could emerge from anywhere and deserved respect regardless of its source. The morning's events had proven that Prince William's competitive side, when channeled properly, could create opportunities for genuine connection and mutual learning that no amount of formal programming could achieve. As noon approached, Sarah Matthews found herself facing an unprecedented challenge. Prince William's schedule called for departure 30 minutes ago, but the future king showed no signs of wanting to leave youth Shedz. He had spent the past hour moving between workshops, trying his hand at various crafts, and engaging in detailed technical discussions with young participants. "Your Royal Highness," Sarah approached carefully, "your next engagement is expecting you in 20 minutes. William looked up from where he had been examining a complex electrical circuit board that Priya was building for a home automation project. "Could we possibly push that back a bit? This is absolutely fascinating work, and I'd hate to rush away from such talented young people." The request put Sarah in a difficult position, but William's obvious enthusiasm for the programs and participants made it impossible to insist on departure. She stepped aside to make urgent phone calls, rearranging the afternoon schedule to accommodate what had become the most successful royal visit in youth Shed's history. Meanwhile, Marcus Johnson found himself at the center of unexpected attention. Word of his victory in the woodworking competition had spread through social media, with photos of his storage box being shared alongside images of Prince William's impressive stool. Local news outlets were requesting interviews, and several professional woodworkers had already contacted youth Shedz asking to see Marcus's work. "I still can't believe it happened," Marcus confided to Emma Rodriguez as they watched William attempt to program a simple LED pattern under the guidance of Tommy Chun. "Yesterday, I was just another kid from Handsworth learning carpentry. Today, I beat a prince in a building competition." Emma smiled at his amazement. "You didn't beat him because he's a prince, Marcus. You beat him because your work was better. That's something to be proud of." The distinction was important. Marcus's victory hadn't been charity or condescension. It had been earned through skill, creativity, and careful craftsmanship. The judges had evaluated both pieces purely on their merits, and Marcus's storage box had genuinely represented superior work. Across the workshop, William was discovering the complexities of modern electronics under Tommy's patient instruction. The 16-year-old had started at youth Shedz as a shy kid with behavioral problems at school, but his passion for technology had transformed him into a confident young teacher. "See, the Arduino board is like the brain," Tommy explained, pointing to components on the circuit board. "It reads inputs from sensors and controls outputs like LEDs or motors based on the program you write." William studied the small computer with genuine fascination. "So you could program it to control lighting in a building or monitor environmental conditions?" "Exactly." Tommy's excitement was infectious. "I'm working on a project to help elderly people monitor their homes remotely. Motion sensors, temperature readings, automatic alerts if something seems wrong." The social implications of Tommy's project weren't lost on William. Here was a young person from a disadvantaged background using advanced technology to solve real problems for vulnerable community members. This was exactly the kind of innovation and social consciousness that Youth Shedz was designed to foster. "That's brilliant work," William said sincerely. "Have you considered patent protection for your innovations?" The question caught Tommy off guard. Patent protection wasn't something he'd ever considered. It seemed like something for big companies and professional inventors, not 16-year-old kids from Birmingham. "Patents are expensive," Tommy replied practically, "and I wouldn't know where to start with all that legal stuff." William made a mental note to follow up on this conversation. Young inventors like Tommy deserve support in protecting and developing their innovations, regardless of their economic circumstances. Bradley Cooper had been listening to the electronics discussion while continuing his work on engine diagnostics. His own project involved developing more affordable testing equipment for small automotive repair shops in underserved areas. "We're all working on stuff like that," Bradley interjected. "Priya's designing electrical systems for community workshops. Jake's figuring out how to restore classic bikes using modern parts that actually work better than the originals." Everything we do here is about solving real problems. The comment highlighted something William was beginning to understand about youth sheds. This wasn't just skills training or keeping young people busy. This was practical innovation happening at the grassroots level, driven by people who understood community problems because they lived them daily. Yasmin approached the group with her welding helmet under her arm, having just completed another section of her metal sculpture. Your Highness, would you like to see the community garden project? We're building raised beds and irrigation systems for the neighborhood. The invitation led to another migration, this time outside, to where several young people were constructing an impressive urban agriculture system. The project combined multiple skills: carpentry for the raised beds, plumbing for irrigation, electronics for automated monitoring, and horticultural knowledge for optimal plant growing conditions. This feeds about 50 families in the surrounding blocks, explained Aisha Patel, a 17-year-old who coordinated the garden project. We grow vegetables that are expensive or hard to find in local shops, things people need for traditional cooking from their home countries. William examined the sophisticated irrigation system that combined simple gravity feed mechanisms with electronic timers and moisture sensors. This is proper engineering, he observed. You've solved complex problems with elegant solutions. The recognition meant everything to Aisha and her team. They had worked for months developing their urban farming system, often feeling like their work was invisible to the broader community. Having their technical achievements acknowledged by someone of William's stature validated the importance of what they were accomplishing. We want to replicate this in other neighborhoods, Aisha continued. The design is modular, so it can adapt to different spaces and growing conditions. Have you documented the design process? William asked. This could be valuable for community development programs worldwide. Again, his question revealed practical thinking that went beyond polite interest. William was seeing the broader applications of what these young people had created, recognizing innovation that deserved wider recognition and support. The garden tour led to discussions about sustainability, food security, and community development that demonstrated the depth of thinking behind Youth Shed's projects. These young people weren't just learning skills. They were developing solutions to genuine social and economic challenges. As the extended visit continued, something remarkable was happening to William's understanding of youth development and community engagement. His formal education and royal duties had exposed him to policy discussions and theoretical frameworks for addressing social problems. But Youth Shedz was showing him innovation and problem-solving happening at the ground level, driven by young people who combine practical skills with deep understanding of community needs. The morning's woodworking competition had been just the entry point into a much larger discovery. Marcus's victory had demonstrated that excellence could emerge from unexpected places, but the broader Youth Shedz program was revealing systematic approaches to fostering innovation and leadership among young people who were often written off by traditional educational and social systems. Emma Rodriguez found William as he examined detailed plans for expanding the community garden project. Your Royal Highness, I hope today has given you a good sense of what we're accomplishing here. It's exceeded every expectation, William replied honestly. The level of innovation and social consciousness among these young people is extraordinary. They're not just learning trades, they're becoming community leaders and problem solvers. Emma had seen many visitors tour Youth Shedz over the years, including politicians, educators, and business leaders. Most left with polite appreciation and vague promises of future support. But William's engagement felt different, more substantive, and genuinely understanding of what made the program effective. The key is treating them as capable innovators from day one, Emma explained. We don't talk down to them or give them simplified projects. We give them real problems to solve and the tools to solve them properly. And it clearly works, William observed, gesturing toward the various projects visible around the facility. Every young person I've met today is engaged in meaningful work that has practical applications. The conversation was interrupted by Marcus, who approached with his winning storage box in hand. Your Royal Highness, I wanted to thank you for the competition this morning. It's been the best day of my life. William accepted the thanks graciously, but his response revealed how much the morning had meant to him as well. Marcus, that competition taught me as much as it taught you. Your craftsmanship was genuinely superior, and I learned a great deal watching you work. The exchange captured something important about what had happened at Youth Shedz. William hadn't just visited a charity program and offered encouragement. He had engaged as an equal participant in learning and competition, allowing himself to be challenged and even defeated by young people whose skills exceeded his own. As the afternoon wore on and departure became unavoidable, William began discussing concrete follow-up actions rather than offering vague promises of future support. He wanted to connect Youth Shed's innovators with patent attorneys, link their community development projects with broader policy discussions, and ensure their work receive recognition in appropriate professional forums. The morning that had begun with a simple woodworking competition was ending with a foundation for ongoing collaboration and support. Marcus's storage box had opened doors that would benefit not just him, but the entire Youth Shed's community and young people in similar programs across the country. The competitive spark that had initiated everything was now channeling itself toward larger goals, creating systems and opportunities that would allow young innovators like Marcus, Tommy, Priya, and Aisha to reach their full potential and contribute their talents to solving the challenges facing their communities. As William finally prepared to leave, it was clear that Youth Shedz had gained more than a royal patron. They had found an advocate who genuinely understood the value of what they were accomplishing and was committed to helping them achieve even greater impact. 3 weeks after the memorable woodworking competition, the impact of Prince William's extended visit to Youth Shedz was still reverberating through Birmingham and beyond. Marcus Johnson sat in Emma Rodriguez's office, staring at documents that 6 months ago would have seemed like fantasy. A formal apprenticeship offer from one of London's most prestigious furniture-making workshops. They saw the photos of your storage box online, Emma explained, and when they learned about the competition with Prince William, they wanted to meet you immediately. The apprenticeship offer had arrived along with similar opportunities for several other Youth Shed's participants. Tommy Chun had been contacted by a technology startup interested in his elderly monitoring system. Priya Singh had received scholarship offers from 3 different engineering programs. Aisha Patel was being courted by urban agriculture consultants who wanted to help scale her community garden innovations. It's like that morning changed everything, Marcus mused, still processing how quickly his life had transformed. Emma nodded, but her expression was thoughtful rather than simply celebratory. The opportunities were always there, Marcus. What changed was people paying attention to the work you were already doing. The distinction was important. Prince William's visit hadn't magically created talent or innovation at Youth Shedz. It had simply provided a platform that made existing excellence visible to people with the power to act on it. Meanwhile, at Kensington Palace, William was reviewing follow-up reports from his Birmingham visit with his private secretary. The official documentation captured the basic facts: duration of visit, number of participants met, media coverage generated, but failed to convey the personal impact the morning had made. "Sir, the furniture workshop in London is requesting permission to use your endorsement in their promotional materials about the new apprenticeship program," his secretary informed him. "Absolutely," William replied without hesitation. "And please follow up on the patent consultation meetings for the young inventors. I want to ensure they get proper legal support for protecting their innovations." The prince's commitment to substantive follow-up had surprised even his own staff. Royal visits typically involve polite engagement, followed by movement to the next scheduled activity. But William had insisted on concrete actions to support the young people he'd met at Youth Shedz. Back in Birmingham, Sarah Matthews was dealing with unprecedented demand for information about Youth Shed's programs. The publicity from William's visit had generated hundreds of inquiries from young people, parents, potential funders, and other community organizations interested in replicating their approach. "We're having to turn people away," Sarah explained to her board of directors during their monthly meeting. We simply don't have capacity for all the interest the royal visit generated. Board Chairman David Thompson reviewed the numbers with satisfaction and concern. Excellent problem to have, but we need to think strategically about expansion. This level of attention won't last forever. The board was right to focus on sustainable growth. Media attention was valuable, but youth Shedz needed to capitalize on current visibility to build long-term support for their programs. Meanwhile, Marcus had made his decision about the London apprenticeship offer. Despite the prestige and opportunities it represented, he wanted to stay in Birmingham and help expand Youth Shed's programs to reach more young people like himself. London will always be there, he told Emma during a follow-up meeting. But right now, there are kids in Handsworth who need to see that someone like them can build something beautiful and have it recognized. I want to be part of making that happen. His decision reflected a maturity that impressed everyone who worked with him. Marcus understood that his victory in the Royal Woodworking competition came with responsibilities as well as opportunities. Tommy Chun had reached a similar conclusion about his technology innovations. Rather than pursuing individual patent protection, he was working with legal advisors arranged by Prince William's office to develop open-source versions of his designs that other community programs could implement freely. If my elderly monitoring system can help people in other neighborhoods, that's more important than making money from it, Tommy explained to a reporter documenting the ongoing impact of the royal visit. These decisions by Marcus, Tommy, and other Youth Shed's participants revealed something important about the values the program instilled. Success wasn't defined solely by individual advancement, but by contribution to community improvement and creating opportunities for others. Prince William's competitive challenge had sparked more than a single morning of engagement. It had catalyzed a broader recognition of innovation and leadership potential among young people who were often overlooked by mainstream institutions. 6 months later, the original woodworking competition had become legendary within Youth Shedz, but its significance had evolved beyond the simple question of who built the better project. New participants learned about Marcus's victory not as a story about beating royalty, but as an example of what became possible when skills were developed seriously and excellence was pursued without compromise. The storage box that Marcus had built was now permanently displayed in the Youth Shed's main workshop, alongside a replica of William's stool. Both pieces served as reminders that quality craftsmanship deserved recognition regardless of who created it. Emma Rodriguez often used the competition story when training new instructors. The moment Prince William suggested a contest, he changed the entire dynamic, she would explain. Instead of being charity recipients, our young people became equals competing on skill and creativity. That's the mindset we try to maintain in everything we do here. The lesson had applications far beyond woodworking. When young people were treated as capable innovators rather than problems to be solved, they consistently exceeded expectations and discovered potentials they didn't know they possessed. A year after the competition, Marcus was leading woodworking instruction for new Youth Shed's participants while pursuing advanced training in furniture restoration. Tommy's monitoring technologies were being implemented in community centers across Birmingham. Priya had started her engineering studies while continuing to design electrical systems for local organizations. Prince William maintained contact with the Youth Shed's program, making periodic visits that were less formal but no less impactful than his original competition morning. He continued to challenge participants to excellence while learning from their innovations and community insights. The competitive spirit that had initiated the woodworking contest had evolved into something larger, a recognition that young people from challenging backgrounds possess skills, creativity, and leadership potential that deserved serious attention and support. During a return visit 18 months later, William found Marcus training a new group of young woodworkers in the same workshop where their competition had taken place. The teenager who had been nervous about meeting royalty had become a confident instructor and community leader. "Still think you could beat me in a building competition?" William asked with the same mischievous grin that had started everything. Marcus looked up from the bookshelf he was helping a new student design. "Anytime you're ready for a rematch, Your Royal Highness. But fair warning, I've learned a few new techniques since our last contest. The exchange captured perfectly how their relationship had evolved. The respect was mutual, the competitive spirit remained, but both men had grown from their original encounter in ways that benefited everyone around them. As William toured the expanded youth Shedz facility, seeing new workshops, additional programs, and dozens of young people engaged in innovative projects, he reflected on how a simple challenge to a woodworking competition had opened doors he hadn't expected. The morning had taught him that his most valuable contributions as a royal patron came not from formal presentations or ceremonial appearances, but from genuine engagement that treated young people as equals capable of teaching him as much as they learned from his attention. Marcus's storage box remained in its place of honor, but it was now surrounded by dozens of other projects representing the work of young people who had been inspired by his example. The competition that had started as a moment of royal playfulness had become the foundation for a program that was transforming lives and communities throughout Birmingham. The true victory hadn't belonged to either contestant in the original woodworking competition. It had belonged to everyone who witnessed excellence being recognized and celebrated, regardless of its source. That morning had proven that when barriers were removed and genuine competition was allowed to flourish, remarkable things became possible for everyone involved. The playful prince who had challenged a young man to a building contest had discovered something profound about leadership, community engagement, and the untapped potential that existed in every neighborhood across Britain. Marcus Johnson had won the woodworking competition, but Prince William had gained insights that would influence his approach to royal service for the rest of his life. In the end, the real legacy of that competitive morning at Youth Shedz wasn't found in the beautiful storage box or elegant stool that had been created. It was found in the ongoing work of young people who had learned that their skills, creativity, and innovations deserve recognition and could make genuine differences in their communities. The competition had ended, but its impact continued to grow with each young person who walked through Youth Shed's doors believing that excellence was possible and that their contributions mattered. That was the most lasting victory of all.